Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 133 of Two Left Thumbs, your favorite gaming podcast. That's all I got. I'm running out of intros, guys. I'm real sorry. I have all these grand plans for intros. They never happen. So this me sporadically just talking shit is the intro this week. So you just have to deal with that. I'm your host, Puppiez. Joining me this week, it's Ains. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. It's good to be here, man. And I didn't realize that, we had been kind of following each other and had interactions previously when you sent me the email to come on. So I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. Yeah, it's weird how small circles work. We were talking about this before, but you and I kind of we follow a few of the same people. We know a few of the same people just through like gaming and the small world we live in general. But for those playing at home, who are you and what do you do?
Really nobody, and I just play a lot of video games. So trying to figure out where to start here. So a lifelong kind of gamer, as many of us, right? I'm sure the people listening. I'm a little bit older, so I've been doing it a long time. And then found myself kind of writing about games and doing reviews and all kinds of things online in random places a few years back. And so in 2015, I actually decided to start a site, which is Seasoned Gaming, as you know. So it's just seasonedgaming.com, and that's kind of blossomed into a bigger thing than I really ever planned it to be, which has been really neat, man. So it's a full outlet. We have YouTube channel, weekly live show, lots of cool guests and videos we've done over the past couple of years, reviews. I mean, it's full service. And kind of the niche thing is that it has no monetization. So there's no ads on the site. There's no clickbait. We don't even monetize our YouTube videos. It's all run out of pocket by me. I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that. And it's really just about kind of spreading positivity and positive gaming information rather than a lot of the nonsense we see online nowadays. So.
Yeah, it's I think when this podcast originally started, we were like we covered a lot of gaming news, and there was so much just like negativity everywhere. It became like really hard sometimes to be like, all right, we need to come up with something decent. It just turned to this like negative cesspool of like news. It's like, okay, well, there's nothing great happening in the gaming industry right now. What do we do? Have you struggled with that at all, or has it been? I mean, I know you've got a pretty far-reaching range of contributors as well, which I'm assuming would help.
So it has been a struggle for sure. One of the things we're constantly fighting back is, I use the word too often, but it really is the definition of clickbait. I mean, a lot of sites just drive on rumors or leaks or wording things in a way that make them controversial. And it's disappointing, and it's actually part of the reason I founded Seasoned Gaming was that it was to get back to just a love of gaming, regardless of platform, regardless of what game you like, just gaming. Because it's a fun thing, right? We do it because it makes us happy, and that's what we should be celebrating. And I think it's very frustrating to see that the gaming kind of online media sites, et cetera, YouTube channels have kind of gone down the same route we've seen in other industries, which is just controversy sells, right?
It's part of this strange human condition, I think, where it's like, oh, there's negativity. We're just instantly drawn to that because we all want to be mad about something. We can't just be collectively happy, and I think that's really sad.
It is very sad. You said it well. And I'm one of those people who, I talk about perspective a lot, and I've shared stories on all kinds of different shows and podcasts. Been through a lot in my life, a lot of challenging things, really tough things. And so, the perspective I've always had is just like, what do I have to complain about? You know what I mean? I mean, live a good life, have good, nice family, spending time talking about video games. What am I mad about? So I just try to bring that positivity to the community. And that's what the site's really all about. But to answer your original question, yeah, it's tough. It's tough to fight through the noise, both from, as you well know, right, from a podcast perspective to just a site perspective, because like I said, we don't do things for clicks. We're not the site putting controversial stuff up there, and clicks don't really matter to us because we're not monetized, right? So what we do try to bring is meaningful things. So gaming news, yes, meaningful news, but also articles. A lot of our contributors write meaningful articles that are important to them. It can be about mental health. It can be about a game they love. It can be about something in the industry, but it's all just, again, I use the word too much, but it's meaningful content. It's not fluff. You know what I mean? Just to try and generate traffic.
Yeah, I suppose, as you said, without having the pressure of trying to monetize and generate those clicks to kind of support your website. You know, you said you're lucky enough to be able to support that on your own, which is fantastic. You're a fucking hero. Get this man a cape, somebody.
It's not easy and it's not cheap, but it is rewarding.
Yeah, it would take a lot of the pressure off both you and contributors to make articles like that they're actually passionate about, and I think that really shows through your website and through the articles that people are putting up, the content that you guys are providing. Really brings to light what you guys are trying to do. I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Any particular challenges you guys have had with running the site, aside from trying not to become clickbaity?
Try not to go down that angle. Yeah. I think the biggest challenge is, and I wrote so our 5-year anniversary officially from when I kind of founded the site was December 1st of last year. And for the 5-year anniversary, we did a few things. We did a cool podcast with all the contributors at the time and some celebratory things. But one thing I did is I wrote an article, which is one of my favorite articles I've ever written, really just speaking out loud into the void of here's what it's like to run a gaming outlet, a small gaming outlet, in the challenges of the industry. And I detailed out everything I've basically faced and the realities of it. And the funny thing is, I had commentary. Some of my articles have gotten decent play, across industry leaders and stuff. And, a couple Xbox employees and some other people in kind of notable positions commented on it and said, this is tough but true. This is like shining a light on the challenges for smaller creators, smaller sites. And basically what I called out is that it's a vicious, the hardest thing I would say is what I call the vicious cycle, which is to get things that would have an impact on your traffic, which is review codes early, right? For big games, not just little indie titles that aren't going to drive any traffic necessarily. Though I love them, don't get me wrong. Meaningful reviews, interviews with people, right, that are have key positions at companies, major companies, big guests who are willing, may have a huge audience who are willing to take the time to guest, right? To do all those things, you have to have traffic. But to get traffic, you have to do those things.
Do all those things, yeah.
And it's a constant tug of war of trying to figure that out when you're not playing in the clickbait space. Because what a lot of sites do, right? They'll have articles that are written, whether they be opinions or kind of deeper articles here and there, but their daily feed is just feeding into the nonsense because that's what generates the clicks, right? That they can then go to big companies and say, hey, we have 10 million visitors a month, give us review codes, give us interviews, etc., right? And they get it because these companies, and trust me, I speak from reality here. It doesn't matter if you're doing good content or nonsense content for the most part. There are some exceptions. If you're way out there and just a complete clown, you know what I mean? They're not going to deal with you. But I have tens and tens of examples I can give of people who have been more of a negative in the space, really driving kind of negativity or controversy, that get interviews, that see growth, that get gift packages, reviews. I mean, you see it all the time. And it's really disappointing to me that more effort and time is not put into pulling up the outlets that are trying to do good work versus the other ones like I just mentioned.
Yes, I have a similar issue, especially with this interview style podcast, where it's becoming the point is like I want to find interesting guests within the gaming community. Normally that means going up through like indie devs and other game developers.
Yes.
I'm really trying to focus on people that are working on the game. So like, I mean, you're a different story that you write for games, which is games journalism, which is a whole other avenue I try and get into as well. But trying to get people like I had a sound designer on the other week. just people that actually were like do the jobs on the game, not just community managers. And getting through those barriers, because I am a very small production, is hard. Because you know, a lot of the time you don't hear back, and it can be a real struggle because you're just like,
you get no response. You get people who respond once and then never again. You know, you try to plan on something.
The classic, let me get back to you. and then you're like, okay, cool, no worries. You message them with that hype. Have you had a chance to get me approved for this interview? Oh no, not yet. Okay, no, not yet. Okay.
It sounds like there's more to say there.
Yeah. And it's hard, man. Like, it's really disheartening because you're just like,
I know. I know. Man.
Is it me? Is it them? Am I just not cool enough to work with some of these people? But again, it's the constant struggle.
I can tell you. At least I can tell you, it's not you. Trust me, I talked to many small creators and outlets and side conversations. You know, I've been fortunate enough to build a decent community, and the seasoned gaming community is fantastic. The one nice thing I will say is that when you put out into what we put out is positivity and, you know, I say quality work. People may disagree, but I believe it is. But when you do that, you get the type of people who appreciate that back, right? And so the community we've developed is really great, and I adore it. But because of that, I've met a lot of people who run smaller sites or smaller channels or shows, and we all have the same conversation, man. It's the same thing. And it's depressing, and I talk to people sometimes who get really down about it. It's like, you know, I'm putting everything I have into this, and people don't get back to me, and yeah, it's a challenge. And I think it's become a bigger challenge. I don't know about you, but past 18 months with the pandemic, more and more people have really tried to get into this, right? Whether it be a site or a channel or a podcast or whatever, there's just more of it now. And it makes it even harder to get through. You know what I mean? One of the more recent ones I've had, and I certainly won't name any names here, but I was speaking through DM on Twitter to a pretty big person at one of the big gaming publishers. And, you know, very cordial, was talking. I was like, hey, I'd love to do an article on some of the things you're working on. It was featured around accessibility. And the person, you know, responded like, yeah, I'd love to come on. I've got this thing I've got to do over the next couple of weeks. And so I reached back out and said, yeah. And now just has ghosted me, just will not respond. In fact, I had one of the PR reps from the company like ask if I had DM'd someone, you know, about coming on the show. And I was like, yeah, we were talking about it. And they were like, yeah, you need to come through the formal channel. Like, I guess she got shut down from even being allowed to go on a show with me without going through official PR. And it was like, it wasn't even anything serious or nothing that wasn't announced. You know, it was just talking about her work. Like, it's very weird, man. Very weird. And I work in the corporate space. So like, I get it. Like I you know, I'm a leadership in a big company, and I work with communications teams and project teams, and it's like, it's not that I don't understand this stuff, but the way it just kind of occurs in the gaming industry is very odd. And I think part of that is due, just my opinion. And I say this sometimes and it comes off in a derogatory way, and I don't mean it that way, but I think a lot of people that are, not the executives, of course, but a lot of people who work in the gaming industry, they don't have prior like corporate experience, right? Like they know the gaming, that's all they've worked in is the gaming industry.
Yeah, there's no the gaming space. Yeah.
And it's very different. It is. And so someone like me who has, you know, I'm going on 25 years of corporate kind of leadership structure and stuff. It's like, to me, it drives me nuts because I'm very detailed and organized. And it's like, oh God, kills me.
Yeah, I think I had this feeling as well. I don't know if it's because I mean, again, with some of the smaller people I do reach out to, if it's an anxiety thing as well, because I think what I found through podcasting, particularly, that a lot of people that I've interviewed haven't been on podcasts before.
Yeah.
And you know, like when there are people that have finally got back to me, so sorry for like holding you back. I wasn't sure. Like I've never done this before. I don't know what to expect. Or I've had people say I just really don't like the look of the podcasting platform, and I don't want to be involved with that. And I'm like, okay. So it was an interesting perspective that I'd never really considered before, because I'm like, oh, it's just, you know, come on and talk about video games. It's doesn't seem that daunting. Just talk about the stuff you love, right?
Yeah. No, I had that exact same joke with a buddy earlier. One of the people I DM. It's like literally you're coming on a game to talk, or coming on a show to talk about video games. Like, why is this taken so seriously? Like, this is supposed to be a
It's
fun thing.
fun.
Like,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
like if you're not allowed to talk about your job, that's fine. We can just not talk about your job and talk about video games, because it's like
Yeah.
endless amounts of video game talk you can have without speaking about professions. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
It is. It's frustrating, and it is a constant battle, no doubt.
So growing up with games,
Yeah.
talk to me about it. So you're an older gamer.
Seasoned gamer.
It's a seasoned gamer, if you will. What was childhood like for you? When did it all start? How did it start? What kept you going?
Yeah. So, gosh, there's a lot here. So, I was born in the late 70s, and my first kind of memory was going to the arcade with my dad, early 80s, so probably 82-ish maybe, and seeing Missile Command, and a few of those really old school arcade games. And then we had an Atari 2600, like pretty much every family at that point. Atari 2600 was really big, and got into playing that when I was 4 and 5 years old, with the family. And then when I was 6 or 7, I went and stayed at a friend's house, and he had just gotten the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES, with Super Mario Brothers. And my mind was blown. I'd never seen anything like it. It's a foundational game for me in many ways, and that kind of inspired me to just, at that point on, I wanted to play video games like all the time. And so I lived with my mom, didn't have much money at all, so it's not like she could run out and buy me an NES. So the next year, actually, she bought me a Sega Master System, which was, the competitor to the NES at the time. And that opened the floodgates. I just played every game I could get my hands on, excuse me, and just developed the love at that point. So from there, that was obviously the 8-bit era. From there, I've been involved every generation, owned more consoles than I can count. So all the normal consoles you'd think of for each generation. Was it Mega Drive over there or Genesis? Mega for Sega.
I think it was Genesis.
Okay.
I didn't start. I'm a late bloomer. I didn't start until like the 64 era, but very late to the 64, just before the original Xbox came out. So
wow.
I was
So I'm talking about ancient history.
You're well
too.
before me. I mean, you started gaming before I was born. So I'm just making you feel a little older. You're welcome.
No, it's fine, man. I actually love it, because it's the what I do find interesting for people like yourself, and especially people that are younger now coming into it. The perspective is very different, right? Understanding the 8 and 16-bit eras and what they did for gaming and the foundations those laid for everything that came after it is really interesting, to talk about with people that are my age or older, and then talk about with people who are like 20, 25, who have no idea about these things, right? But anyway, I every generation I've had every console. I was a serious game collector in my 20s. In fact, when eBay kind of first started, when you used to literally mail money orders to people, there was no online payment.
Oh, wow.
You used to send money in an envelope to people. I've been on eBay since then, trading games internationally, like globally. So I used to import games from like Hong Kong and China and or Japan, I mean. And buy and sell those. So I had a Neo Geo collection. I had 3DO collection, TurboGrafx, every system you could name, I've had it, and collected in. And so been in the tournament scene. I used to play tournaments in arcades, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter. I was a Halo CE, Halo 2 tournament player. Oh, it was amazing. The arcade culture is something. I had this, do you know Cog from Iron Lords?
Yes, I'm vaguely familiar with it. Yeah.
Okay. So he's the host of the Iron Lords show, good buddy of mine in the industry, and we did a one-on-one chat like this. We got into arcade culture. He's about the same age as me, grew up very similar path with gaming, and we both agreed it's like it's something that you can't, if you didn't live through it and experience it, it's just really hard to describe. my evenings at times were spent going to the arcade with as much money as I could scrounge together. And it would almost be like getting in like an online game now, where you join a party with friends, and there's other
Yep.
people or like an MMO you're going to play with, right? You get a big group of people or something. It was like before that in person, right? So you go to the arcade, there'd be 5 friends and then another 10, 15 people, and Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter would be out, and it would get ultra competitive, and you would just play one-on-one, quarter up on the machine to say you're next. And you would line up and just kind of talk crap to each other and battle all night long. And it was just an amazing era to live through. And it's a shame that you can't really replicate that online, because it was very different. So I could talk about this kind of stuff all night. So you have to kind of stop me.
No, that's all right. Let's do it. Tell me about the old days. I need to know.
Back in my day, before, yeah.
Comparatively, like you said, you can't really replicate things like this online. Back then, and when you in your arcade days, you go down to the arcade with a bunch of mates, putting your quarters up. Did you ever think gaming would get to the space that it is now?
No, not in a million years. And that's another unique thing about kind of the 8-bit era. I would say mid 80s to early 90s, even through the 90s, really. Gamers, like people like me who love games, you kind of find your friends who liked video games, right? And that became a niche, a clique. And you were looked at like, you were the geeks, you were the nerds, you were before those words were cool. And you were made fun of, and it was like, parent, depending on your parents, of course. My mom was fine with it, but I mean, some parents didn't like it. You hear on the news about video games, causing problems in children, and all these stories that have been around forever. But it was
good to see nothing has changed there on the news front. Right. My wife was she's doing it online, carer's course. So she's dealing with domestic abuse, disabilities, and all that kind of stuff, working to support there. And they were having a discussion. The video games come up because they're like, how did people deal with depression and stuff? And there's a couple of when I'm depressed or anxious, I kind of turn to video games as like a distraction for a bit of escapism. It's like the whole talk about escapism being dangerous kind of came up, and it's like you shouldn't be escaping to a fictional world. And then we're like, well, what about books? What about movies? It's kind of the same thing. Same thing.
Yeah, in fact, it's funny you bring that up, because 2 months ago, maybe I sat down for a one-on-one chat like this with the research director at takethis.org. So Take This does a lot of good work in this space. And she specifically aligns with digital games. So she researches, scientifically, she PhD in this field of gaming's effect on disabilities and mental health. And we talk about escapism and stuff. So I did an interview with her and talked about all these topics. And she reiterated, on that show, that escapism is the same thing. Like, escapism should not be looked at as a bad thing. Video games are no different than any other form. She brought up a good kind of analogy, a simple analogy, but it's like, why is sitting down to binge watch a show on Netflix considered a funny thing, and playing video game for 8 hours is considered a negative thing? It's the same exact thing. So I think they were stronger at the time, because video games at the time were so, like I said, so niche. They were much smaller. It was a small group of people back then. So it was an interesting time. But I think, again, what that's given is perspective. And I think we always thought, at least I did, and my group of friends always thought, video games were going to be that thing that was relegated to a small group of people. And I think it wasn't until PCs games started going online, MMOs got big, right? The EverQuest and Ultima Online were kind of the first. Of course, World of Warcraft came later. And then Dreamcast kind of paved the way for online gaming. And then Xbox came out, and, they did the whole broadband and Xbox Live. And once that kind of really took off, right? And I think that really kind of changed the environment. In fact, some of us who, I was a beta tester for Xbox Live. I was on Live before it was out.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. I was always
I saw my shirt
of Xbox Live. Still have the shirt. You got the shirt. Been there, done there, got the shirt.
Yeah. I've been there, beta tester. Still have my kit. I have everything from it.
That's really cool.
The funniest thing about that was when you first did it, because I had been playing on Dreamcast and PC and stuff already. So when I started on Xbox Live, I was like, okay, this, I was kind of familiar. But the really neat thing about it with the microphone and everything, which was new at the time, people forget, was that everyone was just so amazed to be playing games together online and talking to each other while doing it, that everyone was really cool. Like, no matter, you didn't know who you were talking to, you know what I mean? You would just talk to some random person in the beta test. And it's like, hey, what's your name? And John, what's your name? George. And okay, let's try this. And you'd just be so amazed and happy and talking and chatting about your, the games and whether you wanted to your family. I met people that way. And now, we always talk about going online and just how toxic it can be with random people. It's kind of sad that it's gone that way.
Yeah, Xbox Live always terrified me when it first came out, and it took me a long time to get like into online gaming. I don't know why it didn't make sense in my head, but I'm like, so I go on my Xbox and I talk to these strangers while I play video games. And I just avoided it for the longest time. I don't think I started online gaming until like Call of Duty 4. Around that era.
Oh yeah, you're several years in at that point. Yeah,
several years in before I'd even bothered to dip my toes in the water. No, like looking back at that now, I'm like, what was so terrifying? Like here I am now talking to strangers on the internet about video games, and like it's just like it's just a weird perspective. Looking back at that, it's like why was I so terrified? Like what was so scary about like just playing games with people? Like even like it's just like playing with someone on the couch, but you don't have to worry about getting a friend
just
over.
on a different couch.
And I just didn't make that connection when I was like back then when I was like just hitting high school. It's like all social awkwardness up the wazoo, and just didn't want to do it. It's like, nah, man, that's weird. I'm just gonna stay here with my single player games for now. And then it's Halo. Like,
it's funny because
like,
I mean, Halo 2 pretty much changed everything, right? I mean, that's the game that, from an online perspective, I mean, for Xbox Live and everything. But it was no different when the internet started kind of really taking off, right? It was like, the older people who can't really fathom the technology at the time, right? Before it became widespread. It was like, what, are you talking to strangers on the internet? It was a big thing. I remember I was a big Gears of War player at one point in time. I still love it, of course, but I played Gears 2 a lot. My good friend of mine in New York, she was one of the community managers for Epic at the time, Epic Games. And so she knew the developers and everything. And I'd play with her and her friends and sometimes the people at Epic. I'd play Gears like every night. And I got to know her and her husband. And, we talked for months and months and months. And eventually me and my now wife decided to take a trip to hang out with them in real life. I'd never met them in real life. And the first thing my mom said is like, you're taking a trip to meet people you've only talked to on the internet? Like, you don't know who these people are. I was like, Mom, it'll be fine. Trust me. I know their kids' names. I know everything about them.
I know everything about them. It's just we haven't physically met in like the same space before.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm staying in their house with their children. I think it's gonna be okay. So it's just it's mindset, right? It just takes time for those shifts to kind of happen.
Yeah, the similar thing. I have the guy I met playing Destiny. We played every day for months and months and months and months, and then I think after about a year or so, it's like, I'm getting married. Do you want to come? So I was like, oh yeah, sweet. So we popped down to Sydney and went to his wedding, and like it was really cool because all his friends that he played with, I played with as well. So we all kind of met there at the wedding. So it was really cool, like to meet all these people for the first time, but know them like really, really well. And it's insane how how cool that is, how possible that is now, thanks to internet, the technology, and video games specifically. Because if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have got to know each other at all. Because I think we found each other through like an LFG for Fault of Glass or something. And just hit it off immediately and started talking shit, and it just went from there. It was great.
That's awesome. Yeah, and again, the great thing, right, is you automatically have a vested interest in similar things, right? Because I mean, you're playing, it's something you love, and you now know they love that thing too, which is how friendships kind of start. So you're already over that first hurdle, right, of trying to find a common interest with someone. I think that's what makes it so neat. Yeah. I talked to a group, multiple groups via DM and party chats. God, DM groups. And I think that's just part of the culture nowadays. And, we plan on meeting, and whenever we can, we're going to meet. But it's, I consider them all good friends now, and I've never met them in real life.
Yeah, I've got several friends like that. I think I've got a few I'm supposed to be meeting, pandemic providing, of course, because lockdowns have been up and down, which I think is another great thing about gaming these days. Now that it's evolved to where it is, given the pandemic and everyone getting locked down, it's really provided a space for people to hang out for mostly positive experience, because I think it's doing tremendous things for people's mental health.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, like, even like just staying at home, I've got my wife and my kids here as well, but I genuinely, like, when it was locking down, I think I spoke about this with someone I was talking to last week. I genuinely struggled, and if it wasn't for video games and like that kind of outward reach, I don't know how I would have like managed the last kind of year and a half, going through what everyone's been through. I mean, we definitely haven't had it worst case here in Australia, but I can imagine it'd only be tougher for people in the States and the UK, where they were in lockdown for, I think there was a friend, she was in lockdown for nearly a full year before they were like allowed out of restrictions and like to let themselves outside. Like, they were only allowed to go out for like walks once a day or something, and that was it. And they just had to wear masks, and they couldn't go with any other people. And I can imagine for a lot of people, video games would have been a really good coping mechanism.
Yeah, I think you're right. Can you hear me okay, by the way?
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay.
It just got a bit it got a bit dicey there for a second. It'll probably come through fine on the recording. I just couldn't hear what you were saying, but I think I patched it together enough, so we're good.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right, and I think that's also why we've seen such a boom. Last year, the big companies were reporting just, really increased revenue on digital content and new consoles, and Game Pass subscriptions for on the Xbox side and PSN Plus and stuff. And it's just, that's the reason so many new people pick this up. And I think, I've said for many years now, because again, been doing this for a long time, and I like to study. I'm a geek. I love to study like industry trends, and I look at gaming companies. And I've said for a while that gaming, and it has now, and it'll continue to grow, but it just has more potential, broader potential than movies and music do. Whether or not it'll be remembered the same way as some classic music, obviously, or classic movies, I don't know. But I think video games are still in their infancy, right? And I think as they evolve and continue to improve and continue to push boundaries on, new directors and musical scores and all these aspects of music that come together, we will get those absolute masterpieces that transcend gaming, in my opinion. That people look at and consider this is an all-time classic. Forget that it's a video game; it's an all-time classic piece of art or media. And I think that's, it's cool, because I think we're kind of living through it. We're living through where we talked from earlier, right? The 8-16-bit era, when gaming was just kind of growing up, and the future, which, Ready Player One, or however you want to think about it. I think we're living through that transition phase where gaming is going to really take over and take on a new life globally, and it's really neat to see. So I love that stuff, man.
Yeah, especially even with gaming right now, because it is I think it's pulling in more, financially speaking anyway, as far as I know, more than most movies and music these days
combined,
which
yearly.
gives it yearly,
yeah.
which is speaks volumes for how much power there is through interactive storytelling and community, especially, because I mean, I think that's what a lot of people find. Again, it's been a regular theme throughout this, where it's people getting together and having fun with video games, and that kind of brings them together as people and a group. And I think that's really good, and I think we'll see more and more of that going forward. And yeah, like you said, like, the future of video games is only just really kicking off. Like, we're still kind of, I think, technology wise at the moment, we're at a bit of a standstill. VR's not quite on its feet yet. It's there. Like, we've had games like Half-Life Alyx, which has been phenomenal. I still have to play. I need to play that game.
Yeah,
I
me
need to be
too.
up
I
here.
haven't played it either.
I've heard nothing but amazing things. I
Me
just
too.
need
Everyone
to.
tells me, why? How have you not played this? Like, buy a VR set tomorrow and go play it. And I'm like, you know,
Yeah, I'll just casually buy a VR set. That's fine.
yeah, like, okay, you know, like, yeah, I'm gonna click my
I think
fingers
they're
and
like
just set up VR.
fifteen
But yeah,
hundred
I
bucks at
think,
the moment.
yeah, no kidding. But I think, you know, it's kind of funny because the technology space is where I really kind of dabble in, only because it applies to my career. I work on some of this kind of stuff, not video games directly, but, you know, the infrastructure and servers and stuff.
Yeah.
And what I'm really, I've written about many times is, you know, specifically kind of Xbox, only because they're driving that forward a lot more. But Stadia, you know, and Google, it's doing, Amazon's starting to dabble in it. But I think, you know, we talk about game streaming, and I think a lot of times it has a negative connotation right now, for all the experiences many of us have had over the past several years with trying to stream games. It just doesn't work extremely well. But I've quoted this quote many times. It was Albert Pinello, who used to be an engineer at Xbox, and he's now with Amazon on Luna. And he said, you know, people always talk about what can't be done. But, you know, I forget what he said. People always talk about what can't be done, but not looking. They're not forward thinking, right? It's like no one would have imagined the iPhone 25, 30 years ago. You know what I mean? But here it is. You can connect to anything you want instantly. Streaming will get there. And I keep telling people all the time, like, you know, it's not going to be as long as you think before you will literally be able to pick up any device, whether it be your iPhone or a tablet or your PC or anything, and connect to Halo or Gears or whatever game you want to, and just pick up, and it'll play seamlessly. Not like it is now, where it's like you can kind of do that with xCloud and it works great in some situations, not so well in others. You know what I mean? There will come a time where it's, you know, our children or our children's children, whatever, will not think anything to just literally pick up a device and connect to anywhere in the world and play any game they want. That's going to get there. And I think once it does that, that's when gaming is going to really, really transcend anything that's been done before from a media perspective.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, yeah, well, once we get there, it'll be amazing. Again, I don't know if we'll see it. We might.
It's gonna be a while, yeah,
like,
but
it could be a while. But I mean, technology is rapidly increasing. Like, it's always getting better, faster. Like, if you look at where we were with like 8-bit games and stuff, and that was mind blowing. And now we're like immersing yourself almost physically into video games with VR. You know, there's like, and that's only getting faster. Like, the developments are coming faster and faster as we understand technology, networking, as we connect through like people over the world as well. So not only are we moving faster and understanding things more, but we have more people that are, because we're all, thanks to the internet, where we're connected and we can go, like, we can speak to people in other countries who may have a different perspective on things, that may make the breakthrough to kind of to get things done.
Yeah, and there's far more money being invested, right? Because the gaming market is so big now, and there's so much revenue to pull from. I mentioned this on my podcast this morning. Is the bigger corporate interests, right? The big players, Microsoft, Amazon, Google. I mean, the biggest of the big see the value in the future in gaming, and once they start truly investing in it and start throwing billions and billions of dollars around, that acceleration will only increase, right? Everyone, those companies are going to have to be the first to do something or do it the best. And so the competition in that space will be fierce. And I think that's why Microsoft has been so bullish lately, in backing Xbox and saying, we're all in, you know, we're all in on gaming, because they just see the future of it. It's the revenue to be had going forward is astronomical. So if you're the biggest company in the world that has, you know, Microsoft's ridiculous, right? They have billions and tens of billions to throw around, I mean, as if it's nothing.
I think just like looking at what they've spent in the last couple of years just on gaming alone, and they're like, we're not done. This is just kind of small change. You know, they're buying up developers and stuff like that, and like supporting a lot of smaller groups to kind of push them forward, to kind of work for them, and then generate things for Game Pass, which is a whole other beast, which is just amazing to watch happen right now. The way it's
again,
changing,
we're like witnessing
space.
it, right?
We're
witnessing that evolution, and that's what's out in front, right? That's the consumer viewpoint, right? So we look at things as journalists and creators and stuff. We're focused on, okay, now they have these studios and they're making these games and Game Pass is growing and stuff, right? And then you have all the investment on the back end, right? The servers they're ramping up, the division of their Azure network that they're dedicating to gaming, right? All those blades that they're creating, and the way your networking works, the deals with telecom companies in countries like South Korea. You know what I mean? There's a lot that's going on to just lay that foundation and broaden out for the future of gaming, and it's really neat, man. I get excited talking about it, if you couldn't tell, because I just right, because I just love it. I love it. I love the fact that there's going to be so many ways to interact with games and so many different experiences to have with games for the rest of my life. And I think that's incredible to me.
Yeah, I think another interesting thing to watch. I mean, yes, there's the technology side of things, but I've been really interested in watching the business side of things grow and how they're attacking that, the moves they're making. Like when like Game Pass first came out, I'm like, this is really interesting. How are they gonna market this? How is this profitable for them? And I that always kind of piqued my interest in following that. Has been really good. I'm still waiting for it's gonna come to Switch first prediction to happen. And I'm calling it. I've been calling it for years. I think the first console that we will see Game Pass on that isn't an Xbox or a Microsoft based thing is going to be the Switch. I don't know if PlayStation will come to the party. They like to kind of keep to themselves, which is fine. You know, they're producing fantastic quality games and pretty decent hardware as well. Like the PlayStation 5 isn't exactly the balk at, but
Yep. I think I don't know. I would tend to agree with you. I wrote an article a couple years ago. I basically went from the tech side to say, because there was a lot of rumors about that, right? Was Game Pass going to end up, and how would that even work? And I was like, well, here's how it'll work, only because I know the details of it, right? So I wrote an article describing that, but I kind of described it from the position of Game Pass being on the Switch and why people think that's really complicated. I'm like, it's really not. It's not that complicated to get working.
No, I mean, it's working on people's
Don't let me downplay the engineering aspects of it, but I mean, you know, what I mean? From a global perspective, you know, that Game Pass is kind of the, you know, if Xbox Live and Xbox is the ecosystem, right? Like Game Pass is the door. That's what they're looking at it as, and they're, you know, that's the entry point, and so they're setting it up so that you can enter through Game Pass anywhere. That's the whole future goal for them. Which goes back to the whole access your games anywhere at any time type thing.
Yeah, I think Xbox Game Pass would be interesting to watch. It'd be interesting to see if they change the way it works anytime soon, because at the moment it's it's pretty good. It's very like a lot of value for money there. Like you're not paying a lot for the games you have access to, and you have access to them nearly anywhere, like PC, phone, anywhere you want now. You can walk down the street and play Halo as of like this year, basically, which would be really, really cool. I don't think I'll be doing that because I'll probably walk into so many traffic poles and trip over gutters. It'll terrible. Right. But it's good to see. I'm really enjoying it. Is there anything you've been playing lately? Like what's been as like there's so much out at the moment. What have you been into?
Yeah, there's too many games. There's just too many. I mean, we're laughing and joking about how gaming has grown and how great it is, and then we're like, oh god, we have too many games to play. You know, it's like it's the most ridiculous problem to have in reality. Funny enough, I was been in a lot of betas and tests. So like I was in the Halo Infinite beta, and if you didn't know, I am a diehard Halo guy. Like Halo's my favorite franchise. Used to be a tournament player years ago. I'm very competitive, so I just adore Halo. I love it. And so the beta for that was just so good, or the technical preview they call it was so good that I played that straight. I mean, like way too many hours those 4 days. And when I came out of that, I just felt like I was in a rut. Like there was no game that was interesting me to play. So
I wanted to go back to more Halo. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
promising
So
sign. I didn't get into the flight, unfortunately. I was left out of this one. I was just watching my Twitter timeline fill up with all these people go, "Oh, we're having so much fun with the Halo bed." I'm just sitting in the corner. Okay, I guess
yeah.
I'll go finish Mass Effect.
So I had to review The Ascent, so I reviewed that. And I'm about 40, 50, halfway through Death's Door, which a lot of people love. We gave it a really, really good review, and I know a lot of friends are raving about Death's Door. So checking that out, need to get back to it. To be honest with you, I'm also a big Souls fan, so I went back to what I call my comfort food, which I started up a playthrough of Dark Souls 3 again the other day, and I've literally just been sucked into that again the past week or so, or past few days or so. So just playing. I've already beaten it multiple times with all the DLC and everything, but I just adore that game. So yeah,
I
playing
found
some
that with a lot
Souls.
of Souls fans, they're always back for more. Like nearly like they've like play through it once every couple of years. I've never touched a Souls game.
Okay.
Again, they terrify me. I'm probably going to enjoy it, but I'm being generally terrible at video games, dying
Okay.
that much, and I'm okay with dying a lot because I'm used to it. But I think something that where a game is specifically designed to just make me die over and over again, I may struggle with a little bit. But I mean, I played Ghost Runner, which is my new
I've heard.
Dark Souls.
Yeah, I've heard
It's
that's incredibly hard. Yeah.
it's brutal. I think I died like 2,500 times in a single run through. It it was painful, but the gameplay loop on it was worth it because it was such a fun, fast game to play, and it didn't keep you out for long. It's all right, you're back within a second. You redo your run, and I think it was really cool. But yeah, Dark Souls is something I haven't touched yet. Maybe one day.
Yeah, I think
Because I was looking at Sekiro, and that looked like a lot of fun. And
if you're worried about difficulty, don't start with Sekiro because that's
right.
I've played and beaten them all.
The faster pace of Sekiro appealed to me more than kind of that slower paced Dark Souls kind of thing. But I mean, maybe I mean they're all on Game Pass, so I'll get to them eventually. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, at least go in. I think I was joking with some other people the other day about this exact statement, but I'm going to say it anyway. And it comes off as like being like arrogant, and it's not meant that way. But the Souls games are not as hard as people make them out to be.
Right.
And the reason I say that is because I think what it is, and funny enough, I was just telling someone earlier that I want to write an article about this because what it is, we've been trained in modern games that dying is a bad thing. It happens so rarely in modern games because you can save every 10, whenever you want endlessly, or games just aren't meant to where lives matter. Like, you're not supposed to die. It's story based or something, right? And Souls is really designed like old games. And I mean that going back again, like we talked about, like 8 and 16-bit era when they were 2D and side scrolling, where you died and you learned, and then you died, and then you learned more, and then you died again. And dying is just part of the game. And so I've had several people ask me, like, I want to get in the Souls games, but exactly like you said, it's like, God, just a game that just makes you want to die over and over again. And I'm like, the biggest hurdle for people with those games is accepting that dying doesn't matter. You just have to mentally get in your head, it's okay to die. Don't be afraid to die. Because there's a lot of reasons. I don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but like I streamed my entire second Souls 3 playthrough with the DLC and everything. And what I was explaining to people on there, it was a great time, by the way, streaming that. We had a lot of laughs. But it's like, say I die and then I lose my souls, right? Which is like your currency in that game. When you respawn, you have 0 souls. You literally have complete freedom. You can run out and die 100 more times. It makes no difference on the game at all. It doesn't matter. So what I try to tell people is just get over the hurdle of worrying about dying, and then you can play free. And once you do that, you realize that every time you die, you're usually learning something, and that just pushes you through the game. But there are people who don't have the tolerance for replaying certain sections or kind of learning certain enemy types, and taking the time to do that. So I get that aspect of it as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of my problem comes down to walking. I don't like walking in video games. Like there's like games like Red Dead, which I loved Red Dead. It was fantastic, but there was just so much travel. And I was like, this is just like, and sure, there's lots of interesting things going on. You see lots of the world, but once you've done that a couple of times, you're all right. Set this to auto travel. I'll come back in 10 minutes. Odyssey was the worst for it for me. Was it Odyssey? Odyssey? Yeah, Odyssey. I think there was one particular mission that really got me. It was like, all right, I had to go pick this guy up and I had to take him to the Olympics. In-game travel, it was a 4,000 kilometer trip or something like that. It was long ass trips, like right across the map. And Odyssey is notoriously large. And you're sitting on a ship this entire time. And you get there, he speaks to a dude for 2 minutes, and then you have to take him back. And you can't fast travel back because you have to escort him back. And I was like, excuse me, no, this is not. I was so upset. And I think I get like that. That's why I also haven't tried Death Stranding. As amazing as that game looks, I just don't think I could deal with the tediousness of just having to walk to places with not a lot happening in the meantime. I have a very short attention span. And like people say, oh, the walking is a mechanic in itself, which I understand. I've kind of seen, but at what point does that become like tedious for like 10-15 minutes when you're just trying to walk across something? And I think that's where I sit with that. And Souls, again, like in the dying, it's more the traveling back through the old places to get the things that you need back and get your souls back that is a deterrent for me.
I get it.
But maybe one day. I don't know.
The reason I laughed when you said Sekiro is so I've played all the Souls and Bloodborne and Sekiro. I actually reviewed Sekiro. And I think it's generally agreed, at least from the people I've talked to, that, in terms of difficulty, Sekiro is the hardest of all of them.
Right.
Because it does have that fast-paced combat, but it's not like other kind of martial arts games where it's kind of free-flowing, hack and slash and stuff. There's a rhythm to it. And you have to do it a specific way that's designed in the game. Otherwise, you're going to die. And it's not only very different from the Souls and Bloodborne games, but it's very different from anything else I've played. Some people really love it. Others are, it's probably not one I'm going to replay. It's a very, very good game, but it is extremely, extremely hard at times.
Yeah, it sounds wildly unforgiving. I know a few people that have kind of got a few bosses in and going, I'm never touching this game again.
It's tough. It's tough. Yeah, I had more trouble with that one by a long shot than I did Souls or Bloodborne, for sure.
Right. Yeah, it's maybe one day I'll be convinced to play Dark Souls. I don't know when that'll be, but we'll get there. I think we'll leave it there for today, Ains.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me about everything. It's been fantastic to get to know you. For those listening at home, where can they find you and your things on the internet?
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on, man. I if you couldn't tell, I love talking about this stuff. I get very passionate about these conversations, so it's a love for me. And I appreciate the invite, and hope to get to talk to you more in the future. I know we were talking about Elliot and Direct Gaming, and I want to do more with him. The time zone is tough, man. Trying to work through.
It is real rough. I've found that with podcasts. I'm like up at like 3 a.m. to like interview people over in the States and the UK, which is fun.
Yeah,
we'll definitely have to get some more stuff done for sure.
No doubt. So we'll definitely talk more. But thank you again. So just Seasoned Gaming. It because we're a small site, like we were talking about at the beginning, every person who just visits the site on a daily basis or checks in once in a while or checks out the show that we do or shows that we do or a review that we post, and, just clicking on it and taking a look means a lot to us because it's not like we're getting 10 million views a day. You know what I mean? So it's nice seeing new people find us. So you can find seasonedgaming.com, Seasoned Gaming on Twitter. I'm Ains. I'm easy to find on Twitter. There's not many Ainsleys out there. And then we do have information on all the contributors on the site as well. So there's a Meet the Crew page, and you can kind of find their Twitter profiles and some information about them there. It'd be awesome if you check out some of their work. And then lastly, we'll Well, two things. We do an initiative called the Good in Gaming, which is all about positivity, how gaming impacts mental health. A lot of the stuff we were talking about earlier. So there's a dedicated page to that on the site with some really cool interviews and articles and stuff. If you're into that aspect. And then lastly, we do sell merch as well. And the only reason I call that out is not to make money, because like everything else we do, all the profits for that go to gaming charities. So it goes to Able Gamers and Special Effect out of the UK. So it's always neat when people support us with merch, because I get to donate to those companies. So pretty neat, man. But yeah, thanks again. It was a pleasure chatting.
No problem, guys. Make sure you go check that out. For those who are listening and or watching, all the links for this will be in the description below, so you can go find that. And they're gonna ad-free website, run off his own back. You should support this guy as much as humanly possible. Yeah. For those listening, if you want to find the podcast, you can find us at Twitter on left_pod. You can find us on Instagram, 2leftthumbspodcast, and you can find our YouTube page by going to 2leftthumbs.online. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. Ains, thank you for joining me this week. Really appreciate it. And everyone else, I'll talk at you next week. Bye.